Here we are once again, my brothers and sisters. I want to welcome you to another Living Hope Today study. Today we find ourselves in Exodus chapter 22. Why does God seem so intent on delivering rules and regulations about every little thing in the community of Israel as they wander in the desert of Sinai? What's going on? You know, we live in an age where some people advocate, well, we should defund the police, as if to say that the human heart doesn't need to have rules and regulations, doesn't need to have law, because we're all basically good people and we will evolve and transform into loving, gracious, nice people that won't hurt each other if we're given enough time. Well, God knows we're sinners. God knows we have sinful natures, and we will put ourselves first. We will do whatever we can do to help ourselves, even at the expense of someone else. At least that's our tendency. And God says, hey, let me give you some rules. Let me create a justice system for you. And I want you to see as we go through this, because we might not understand all these rules. They might not make sense to our culture, but you have to understand that the community of Israel at this time is in the middle of paganism. Egypt, totally pagan. All these other nations that are standing in the way of Israel inheriting the promised land, totally pagan. I mean, it's kill or be killed. It's steal if you can. There's no governing morality that helps people do the right thing. No. But God has called his people to be holy, to be set apart, to live their lives according to what he says. And that's what's being unpacked for us today. As we get to chapter 22, I just want to remind you, we're going to say this a lot as we go through these kinds of passages. There are three kinds of laws in the Old Testament. You need to memorize this. You need to know this. There is first the moral law. We saw that as God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't commit adultery. These are the things that carry through the whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. God's moral standard. There's no deviation. There's no modification. These are the things that are set in stone, so to speak. They're timeless. A second kind of law, ceremonial law. And we'll get to that as we go further in the book, but this is about worship practices. It's about how the sacrifices are to be conducted, what the priests are supposed to do, what can be eaten, what can't be eaten. There'll be dietary laws in here. But in the end, we end up in the third kind of law, civil law. And that's where we are today in Exodus 22. Civil law is about property rights. It's about justice. It's about punishing the evildoers for whatever crime that comes up. Now, as we begin this, I take you to Exodus 22:1, and you see that first word, if. I know I didn't make a big deal about this, but if you think about this word, if, this word if, which normally introduces a condition, if this, then that, right? There's 23 ifs in this chapter. I mean, God is trying to cover the contingencies of what might happen. This is not saying that this is God's perfect law. This is what he wants for all time. This is saying, I know your heart. You're likely to go off track. If you do, these are the remedies. All right, so let's just look at it. If a man steals, so the first thing we talk about here is theft. An ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. What are we talking about? Restitution. Okay, if a thief, now we're talking about burglary, is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. When I first read that, I thought, oh, wow, God started to make my day law, right? Somebody breaks in, you feel threatened, you kill him, you're not guilty. And then God adds this, watch this, but if it happens after sunrise, in other words, the sun is up and you kill the intruder, he is guilty of bloodshed. A thief must certainly make restitution, but if he has nothing, he must be sold to pay for his theft. So back in that community, God says, look, if it's daylight, maybe you know you have a chance to flee. You're not to kill the intruder, but he has to make restitution. If he has nothing, okay, then he's going to get sold into slavery to pay the debt. If the stolen animal is found alive, okay, so if you find that animal that's been taken and it's in his possession, whether it's an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he must pay back double. Again, great restraint, great punishment in terms of this is why you should not do the wrong thing. There is a high price to pay. If a man grazes his livestock in a field or vineyard and lets them stray and they graze in another man's field, he must make restitution from the best of his own field. Again, now here we have casual neglect, right? I didn't know my cow was over there where your pasture is, but I'm going to pay you back because my cow ate your stuff. If a fire breaks out and spreads into the thorn bushes so that it burns shocks of grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. Here we have restitution for arson. If a man gives his neighbor silver or goods for safekeeping and they are stolen from the neighbor's house, the thief, if he's caught, must pay back double. Again, punishment for the evildoer. But if the thief is not found, the owner of the house must appear before the judges to determine whether he has laid his hands on the other man's property. In other words, maybe the guy that is storing the property for the other is the thief. We just have to make sure that he's not the one. In all cases of illegal possession of an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or any other lost property about which somebody says, this is mine, both parties are to bring their cases before the judges. In other words, we go to court and we decide what happens. Again, this is how the legal system is built even today. In fact, one could say that many features of modern legal theory are found right here in the inception of the New Testament or Old Testament law. This is where a lot of it comes from. The one whom the judges declare guilty must pay back double to his neighbor. In other words, a judgment will be made. That judgment will have consequence. If a man gives a donkey, an ox, or a sheep, or any other animal to his neighbor for safekeeping and it dies, or is injured, or is taken away while no one is looking, the issue between them will be settled by the taking of an oath before the Lord. If the neighbor did not lay hands on the other person's property, the owner is to accept this, and no restitution is required. Isn't that amazing? We're going to make you stand before God and swear to God that you are not guilty of stealing this other man's property. And if you stand before God and you swear that oath, then we're going to call it good, and the owner's going to accept that. What does that tell you? That tells you they have a fairly serious view of God's judgment, in the sense that if you lie in that instance, they trust that God will be the one to call you out for your deception and judge you accordingly. If you tell the people that under oath you're not guilty, they'll receive that answer. Fascinating, isn't it? Because in our modern world, lying is expected. In fact, it's almost unheard of not to lie in those situations. Anyway, but if the animal was stolen from the neighbor, he must make restitution to the owner. If it's turning out that, oh yeah, I did take it, well, pay him back. If it was torn to pieces by a wild animal, he shall bring in the remains as evidence, and he'll not be required to pay for the torn animal. Okay? Something happened beyond his ability to control, he is not going to be found to be in a position to bring restitution. Look at all these ifs. If a man borrows an animal from his neighbor and it's injured or dies while the owner is not present, he must make restitution. But if the owner's with the animal, the borrower will not have to pay. If the animal was hired, the money paid for the hire covers the loss. Look at how detailed God is getting about how to manage the legal system of his faith community. Watch this. If a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married, and he sleeps with her, notice it doesn't say he rapes her. It might be the case that she's completely willing in this situation. He must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. Okay, so you want to have sex outside of marriage and you seduce a virgin, guess what? You're going to be married by the end, and you're going to pay. You're going to pay the father. But hey, wait. The father has a say in this culture about who his daughter marries. If the father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. We're going to take your money, but you're not going to take our daughter. All right. There's a consequence for fornication. Do not allow a sorceress to live. Oh, we're back to capital punishment. For what? For being a sorceress. For being somebody that calls on evil forces to discern the future, to read the tarot cards, to gaze at the stars, to do anything other than submit to God himself. That person is to be eliminated from the community. That's how strongly God feels about it. Anyone who has sexual relationships with an animal must be put to death. Bestiality is a capital offense in God's community. He will not tolerate it. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord must be destroyed. God is not going to allow his community of faith to get off track because somebody decides God is not God. No, that person is going to be not just exiled, but eliminated from the community. That's how strongly God feels about it. Then look at this in 21. Do not mistreat an alien or oppress him, for you were aliens in Egypt. Okay, you guys know what it's like to be a foreigner in a foreign land. If somebody's in your community that isn't Jewish, doesn't belong to the 12 tribes, you can't treat him badly. You can't be mean to him just because he's not like you or not from where you're from. Doesn't have the same lineage. God has a heart for the alien here. Alien isn't like the outer space alien. Alien is just somebody that's not in the community of Israel. Do not take advantage of a widow or an orphan. Wow, this has echoes we read again in James, all the way in the New Testament. Pure and true religion is this, to do what? To take care of orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself unstained from the world. James 1:27. Here you see it. The inception, 22:22, book of Exodus. Just because somebody's weak and can't defend themselves and has no resource doesn't mean you can take advantage of them. If you do, and they cry out to me, I will certainly hear their cry. That's a threat, isn't it? Well, God spells it out just in case you didn't get it. My anger will be aroused and I will kill you with the sword. Oh yeah, I guess that is a threat. Your wives will become widows. Oh, wow. And your children fatherless. Okay. God really takes that seriously. If you want to take advantage of somebody that has nothing and has no power to defend themselves, you better be careful, because if they call out to God, God is going to respond against the evildoer. That's what he's telling us. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not be like a money lender. Charge him no interest. Charge him no interest. Visa, MasterCard, they don't know about this verse. But in the end, God is saying, look, be careful how you treat people that belong to me. Don't take advantage of them. Even if you're lending them money, don't earn money off of them. Just help them. They'll pay you back what they borrowed. That's enough. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, okay, like collateral, right? Your neighbor wants something and you say, what are you going to give me for collateral? And he says, here's my cloak. The scripture says, wait a minute, you need to give it back to him by sunset. Yeah, but he hasn't paid me back yet. I don't have to give it back to him. This is my collateral. God says, because his cloak is the only covering he has for his body. In other words, it gets cold in the desert at night. He needs his cloak. What else will he sleep in? When he cries out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. Here's God giving us his heart for the one that needs help. Do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people. Wow. That's a double whammy, isn't it? Don't blaspheme God. Well, we've seen that many times, but don't curse the ruler of your people. I guess God wants us to understand that he does control the nations. He is sovereignly in charge, and whoever is in political power, whether we like it or not, is still in the position where God has allowed them to have that office. Don't blaspheme God. Don't curse the ruler of your people. Don't hold back offerings from your granaries or your vats. You must give me the firstborn of your sons. Remember, we saw that in the Passover story. Do the same with your cattle and your sheep. Let them stay with their mothers for 7 days, but give them to me. On the 8th day, you are to be my holy people. There it is. Be my holy people. Be set apart. Live the way I tell you to live. So do not eat the meat of an animal torn by wild beasts. Throw it to the dogs. God is completely specific about how he requires his community to function. Very interesting, isn't it? These laws don't seem egregious, but again, it requires that we say, God, you know more than me. If you want me to live this way, I will submit to you. I will live according to your word. A goal for all of us who follow Jesus. God bless you, church. Serve him well.